Roger, thanks for dropping by. A bit of kitchen time. And yes, you did read that title right. We are putting a Masdevallia on a mount. I've probably done dafter things, but I can't remember when. This little Masdevallia, which I like a lot, was put in here to rescue as the roots rotted. And it was just put in some moss to see if it would grow and get some roots. I think it's been in there about a year now. Looks like we might have a root, but it's not working. Like I always say, if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, you are highly likely to get the same result. So you're coming out, hopefully intact. Yes. See, the moss smells mossy. It doesn't smell rotten or gone. I don't see any signs of decent roots in here yet. So I'm keeping the live moss on the top separate because it's going to get used again. There's nothing wrong with that. But we won't mount the fern. Or ferns, several. They were probably spores in the moss, in the live moss that I put on the top. But there's not a lot going on with this, but if you look at it carefully, that little new growth there has a new root. So this may be good timing. But these old roots here have gone. They are of no use. But there is a little white root there. And another one there. But these roots have gone, so they're coming straight off. Not mounting a plant with a shed load of dead roots. But I'm going to leave the stumps so that I've got something to tie on the mount. But they're gone. And that's probably exactly as it was when it went in that pot to be rescued. It's done nothing. So I'm just looking to see, there's an old part to the plant there. That can come off. There we go. That leaves the piece that's liable to grow, except for that little piece there, which is also a dead piece. Will that just come off? Yes, it's just a piece with a dead leaf. That leaves me the tiniest of pieces. But it is a piece with several new growths and 2 new roots. That's all there is, basically. Now, how much moss do we need on a mount with a Masdevallia that's got no roots? And the answer is next to nothing for now. So we'll get rid of the old, the zombie moss. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some moss on the mount, like that. And then I'm going to put the plant on top of that. And then I'm going to put the rest of the live moss. I don't think that's going to sit there. You might have to use 2 hands here. And then I'm going to put the rest of the live moss over the top of that root area and around the base of the plant. So what we will end up with is that tied on. Yeah? Now, what's the difference, I hear you say? He listens carefully. The difference is, because that plant effectively wasn't growing, you water the moss and it stays wet for a huge amount of time. And what happens to moisture in moss? It turns acidic. Now in the wild, Masdevallias would remain wet. Constant mist and fog and rains. They're in a constantly sort of wet, almost dripping environment. But that water is clean water. It's fresh water. And it keeps going through the area where their roots are. It doesn't get chance to turn acidic. So like I said, if you pour fresh water through a pot of moss every single day, it's going to stay fresh. But if you leave it for a fortnight soaking wet, by the time you come out the other end, it's highly acidic, because that's what the moss does. Right. There's something I haven't done for a very long time, is tie a plant onto a mount with a bit of fishing line. Now, I have bought some more fishing line. I got some off the internet. I had to take a guess with the weight, the actual thickness, because I didn't know what this is, because it doesn't say. Funny actually, right down buried in under all the coils is actually the price. I don't know how anybody was supposed to read that, I'm sure. But what we will do, if we can get this out, I have to get my pliers. Sorry about that. It tucks into that groove so tight that it just won't come out. It needs a tug. But I think that as a guess, the new stuff that I've bought is a bit thinner, but not a lot. And it'll do. You know, bearing in mind that's a £10 breaking strain. You shouldn't be pulling £10 on plants with roots. You're going to cut them in half if you put that full weight on. So I'm still going to use up the old stuff first until it's gone. This time I'm not going to pull that quite so hard into that little groove, and we'll see how we go. Right, we'll start off with our Slipknot, big enough to go over the bark, and a long enough end to have something left to tie the other end with when we get to that point. So about like that, but with a bigger noose. Loop, whatever you want to call it. So I'm holding it with my thumb until I get that first loop round. Now, under some circumstances, I'd have put the loop round first and then put the moss on top and then pulled it tight. But this is only a small mount. I can do it all with one hand. So there's our first turn. Second turn. Tuck the moss in nicely. I want this to look nice as well. Around the top of the plant to hold the moss in place at that point, and then round relatively tight across the plant. That's to hold the plant tight, this one. Now, have we got the plant? Yes, that's plenty tight enough. It's only got about 3 leaves on it. And then we come back, find our V that was made with the first loop. Go through there and then get tangled up so we can't get hold of it. Come here. Oh, can you believe it? Get in there. It's just not going to play ball today. All you've got to do is thread through there. That's all you have to do. It's not difficult. Thank you. And then we've got something to pull against when we tie our knot. I always use a reef knot, right over left, left over right, or the other way round. You do it the other way round, it works the same. Usually pulls tight and doesn't slip. So we are butterfingers today, aren't we? And what I'm going to do this time, to pull the whole lot tight, I'm going to thread the end back round all of the loops and gather them together and tie again, and that will just tighten everything. So we'll get a knot like that, and then we will gently pull that and gather the loops together like so, and tie that off. There we go. Right, so Masdevallia on a mount. Now what will happen is it will get watered with the mounted orchids. So it'll get watered every couple of days and it will freshen it up. So the root mass will end up in a much fresher environment than it has been, and that might stimulate it back into growth. It's actually Masdevallia copper wing. I do have a tag, so I don't know whether that will stay in there. I'll try and tuck it in there. Might do. It feels quite tight. I'm not going to forget what it is. It's the only Masdevallia I've got on the mount, isn't it? We'll see if that grows. Now if that starts pushing down roots that come out of the end of the moss, then I'll add some more moss to the point where it can get a reasonable root system. Now if the roots start coming out of the bottom of the moss and hanging in the air, they might get trimmed. The reason being, most Masdevallia root systems are branching, so if you get a damaged root it'll push out sideways, which should fill the moss up. But let's get some first before we worry about what doing with them. If it really roots well and lots of roots start forming, we could unmount it and put it on a bigger mount. You know, if it likes growing like that, well, maybe we can work with it. Anyway, something a bit different. So that's what it looks like on its mount. It's not much of it, but it is in active growth. That is important. This is a new growth. And we did have those two little roots, which are now down in some moss, which when I pour the RO water on it in a minute, we'll get the acidity washed out of it. And then we'll see what happens. We'll go from there. Good fun, isn't it? Something a bit different. Do the same thing over and over again. I start falling asleep, let alone you lot. See you next time. Oh, I suppose I'd better start putting jokes on the end again, but I'm not doing long elaborate story jokes. I'm going to try and pick on some one-liners that I've stolen from YouTube clips. Okay, so I've often wondered over the years, why when you're watching a frisbee coming towards you, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then it hit me.